The company's name was on the building, my name was on nothing. 7 years. That's how long I spent building Hartwell Interiors, from a small boutique firm into one of the most recognized commercial design studios in the Pacific Northwest. 7 years of 70-hour weeks, of flying to client meetings my father was too tired to attend, of fixing the billing errors my brother made because he'd rather be on a golf course than at his desk. 7 years of my life poured into something that was never, not once, referred to as mine. My reward? A corner office I wasn't allowed to redecorate, and a title that sounded impressive until you realized it came with zero equity. My brother got 38% of the company on his 25th birthday. He hadn't designed a single room. I want to tell you I handled that gracefully. I didn't. I went home, sat in my car in the parking garage for 40 minutes, and cried until my mascara was past saving. Then I went back inside and finished the Meridian Hotel proposal, because nobody else was going to do it. That's who I was, that's who I had always been in that family. My name is Avery. I'm the one who stays. My brother's name is Cole. Cole is the one who leaves and somehow gets rewarded for coming back. Our father built Hartwell Interiors in the late 90s with a vision that was genuinely ahead of its time. Sustainable materials before sustainability was marketable. Biophilic design before anyone knew what to call it. He had real talent. He also had a drinking problem that got quieter as he got older, and a favoritism problem that never did. Cole was the firstborn. Cole was funny, easy, the kind of person who fills a room without trying. I understood why people loved him. I just also knew that he'd forgotten our mother's birthday 3 years running. That he'd borrowed money from my father and never paid it back. And that the client relationship he claimed to be managing in Portland for 18 months was mostly him dating someone who worked at a brewery. When he came back with a tan and a new wardrobe, and my father looked at him like the prodigal son had returned. I looked at him like the problem had returned. He slid back into the office like he'd never left. My father gave him the title of creative director. I had been doing the creative direction, along with the operations, along with the client management, for the better part of 2 years. Nobody mentioned that. Nobody said, "Avery, we're restructuring. Here's what changes for you." I found out at a staff meeting. I smiled through it. I went back to my desk and I kept working. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself my father would see. People always told me that. Just keep your head down, Avery, he'll notice eventually. He'll appreciate what you do. He noticed. He just didn't care. The appreciation conversation happened once, about 4 years in. I had just closed the Callaway Medical Center contract, the largest project in the firm's history at that point. $2.4 million, a full commercial interior redesign across 6 floors. I had sourced it, pitched it, and won it. I mentioned, carefully, that I hoped this demonstrated I was ready for a more formal leadership role. Maybe partnership. Maybe equity. My father looked at me across his desk, the same desk he'd had since 1998, and he said, "You're so good at what you do, sweetheart. I don't want to lose you to paperwork." He said it warmly, like it was a compliment. Like telling me I was too valuable to actually value was a kindness. I thanked him and left his office and went to the bathroom and stood at the sink for a very long time, looking at my own face. Sweetheart. That was the moment I started quietly building something else. Not out of anger. Or not only out of anger. Out of the recognition that I had been waiting for something that was never coming. My father didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as the person who made everything run, so he didn't have to think about it. Those are not the same thing. I had confused them for years, and the confusion had cost me. I started taking on private consulting projects on evenings and weekends. Small at first. A restaurant owner who needed help with a dining room refresh. A tech startup that wanted their office to stop looking like a tech startup. I charged real rates, not the discounted ones my father used to win clients on relationships. I delivered real results. People referred me to other people. I kept this completely to myself. The only person who knew was my friend Petra, who had her own small architecture practice, and who had been telling me for 3 years to leave Hartwell. Petra had watched me cover for Cole during the Portland months. She had watched me smile through the staff meeting. She was not the kind of friend who said I told you so, but she was the kind who kept the receipts. You're running 2 businesses, she told me one night over dinner. One of them just isn't paying you correctly. She wasn't wrong. The thing about being the invisible one in a family is that invisibility has a dual nature. Yes, you don't get the credit, but you also get to see everything. I knew exactly what Hartwell Interiors was worth. I knew exactly which clients were loyal to the firm and which ones were loyal to me personally. I knew where the inefficiencies were, which vendor relationships were overpriced, which projects had the highest margins. I had been the operational brain of this company for 7 years, and not one person had ever asked me to explain how it worked. That was about to be their problem. My father had a minor cardiac event in October. Nothing catastrophic. He spent 3 days in the hospital, came home, was told to reduce his stress load and eat better. Cole flew back from wherever he'd been that month. There was a lot of family energy in the house. I drove my father to his cardiology follow-ups, picked up his prescriptions, fielded calls from concerned clients so he wouldn't have to. Cole made a lot of noise about being present and then spent most of his time at the house on his laptop. What he was doing I couldn't tell you. During those weeks, the question of the company's future started being discussed openly for the first time. My father had always vaguely implied that the company would be handled when the time came. I had assumed naively, I now understand, that handling it would involve acknowledging who had actually been running it. What became clear over dinners and quiet conversations I was sometimes included in and sometimes not, was that my father was planning to formalize Cole's role as the future of Hartwell. Not mine. Cole would take over as principal, the company would pass to him. There was some language about a consulting arrangement for me, something about retaining my institutional knowledge for a transition period. The number mentioned was $40,000. One time. For 7 years of my life and the operational infrastructure I had single-handedly built. I heard this secondhand, from my aunt, who had been at a dinner I wasn't invited to. I sat with it for 2 weeks before I said anything. I kept going to work. I kept managing the active projects. I kept answering client emails at 10 at night because that's what you did when you actually cared about the work. Then I asked my father if we could have a formal conversation about the future of the firm. He seemed surprised I wanted to talk about it. I think he'd assumed I would simply accept whatever was decided. I think he'd always assumed that. We sat in his home office on a Saturday morning, coffee getting cold, his dog asleep under the desk. He looked tired. Thinner than before the cardiac event. I had spent 4 weeks being his primary support system, and I loved him. I want to be clear about that. I loved him in the complicated, exhausting way you love someone who has never quite seen you. I asked him directly, what was his plan for the company, and what role did he see for me in it? He told me, with genuine warmth, that Cole was going to lead Hartwell into the next chapter. That Cole had the vision and the charisma to take it to the next level. That he hoped I would stay on to help with the transition. That my knowledge was invaluable. That there would be a compensation package. He did not mention an amount. He did not mention equity. He did not ask what I wanted. I asked about the package. He said the lawyers were working on it, but it would be fair. I asked what fair meant. He changed the subject to the Meridian Hotel renovation, which I was currently managing, and whether I thought we'd hit the spring deadline. I said yes, and we finished our coffee and I drove home. I called Petra on the way. How did it go? She asked. I need you to help me register an LLC, I said. Petra laughed, not unkindly. I've had that paperwork ready for 8 months, she said. What are we naming it? We named it Navara Studio. It would take me another month to understand the full irony of my father's plan, which was this. The consulting arrangement he wanted me to sign would have included a non-compete clause, preventing me from working with any client Hartwell had served in the previous 3 years. He had not mentioned this. It was buried in the draft documents his attorney sent over. He had been planning to pay me $40,000 and lock me out of the industry I had spent my career building. I read that document very carefully. Then I sent it to a lawyer friend of mine who read it even more carefully. Her response was 2 sentences. This is aggressive. Do not sign this. I didn't. The formal meeting to discuss the transition happened on a Thursday afternoon. My father was there. Cole was there. Their attorney was there. I had been told it was a transition planning conversation. It turned out to include documents they expected me to sign that day. I came prepared. I had a folder. In that folder was a 7-year record of every major contract I had sourced, every project I had led, every client I had onboarded, and the revenue each one had generated. I had the operational manual I had written, which documented every vendor relationship, every billing process, every workflow the firm relied on. I had the comps for what a director-level operations and business development role at a comparable firm would have paid over those same 7 years. The number was not $40,000. The number was significantly larger. I set the folder on the table. I told them I was grateful for everything Hartwell had given me, and that I wished the firm continued success. I told them I would not be signing the consulting agreement. I told them I had reviewed the non-compete clause and found it unenforceable, given that I had never been issued a formal employment contract with those terms. My father looked confused. Cole looked uncomfortable. The attorney looked like he was recalculating something. I told them that I would complete the active projects I was currently managing through to their natural conclusion, as a professional courtesy, and that any project work beyond that would be billed at my standard consulting rate through Navarra Studio. Then I slid my company key card and my office key across the table. I want to thank you for 7 years, I said. I learned a lot about what I'm capable of. I picked up my folder and I left. I sat in my car in the parking lot of my father's office building, and I did not cry. I had cried enough already. I had cried through the Saturday morning coffee, through the 2 weeks of silence, through the drive home from every office birthday party where Cole got a cake and I got a card. I was done crying about this particular thing. What I felt was something cleaner, lighter, like a calculation had finally been settled. My phone buzzed almost immediately. A text from Cole. Can we talk? I put the phone in my bag and drove to meet Petra for lunch. The next 6 months were not easy. I want to be honest about that because I think the version of the story where everything falls into place immediately is not useful to anyone. I lost sleep. I questioned myself on a monthly basis. There were 2 separate weeks where I was so deep in the administrative work of starting a business, the insurance, the contracts, the bookkeeping, the marketing, all the things that had simply existed at Hartwell without me ever having to create them from scratch, that I couldn't remember why I'd left. But the clients came. Not immediately. But they came. The first one was a woman named June who ran a small real estate development company, and who I had met at a Hartwell client event 3 years earlier. She'd always liked my work. She had a new mixed-use project, commercial ground floor with residential above, and she wanted someone who understood both the aesthetic and the practical constraints of a working building. She called Hartwell first. They told her I was no longer with the firm. She called me 2 days later. That project was the foundation. June was well-connected, generous with referrals, and exacting in her standards, the combination that produces the best testimonials. Within 8 months, Navarra Studio had 4 active projects and a wait list. I did not gloat. I did not clothe my father. I worked. There is a specific kind of satisfaction in building something that is entirely yours, not shared credit, not institutional momentum, not someone else's reputation opening the door for you. Just your work, your name, your decisions. I hadn't known what that felt like before. Now, I couldn't imagine going back. My father called me 6 months after I left. The Meridian Hotel project, the one I had promised to see through, had wrapped, and he was calling to thank me for the professionalism. He said the clients had specifically asked about me. He said he hoped there were no hard feelings. I told him there weren't. I meant it mostly. He asked how the new venture was going. I told him it was going well. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said something I hadn't expected. He said, "I didn't do right by you. I've been thinking about that." I didn't say anything for a few seconds. I was standing in my new studio space. I'd signed the lease 2 months earlier, a real office, my name on the door, and I was looking out the window at the street below, and I was thinking about the Saturday morning coffee, and the word sweetheart, and the non-compete clause, and the $40,000 like a door prize for a life's work. "I know," I said. I think we both know. He asked if we could have dinner sometime. I said yes. I meant that too. We are not the same as we were. I don't think we can be. But I also don't think that's entirely his fault or entirely mine. Some relationships have a shape that only works when one person is diminished, and when that person stops being diminished, the shape has to change. We're figuring out what the new shape looks like. Cole still runs Hartwell. By all accounts, he's struggling with the operational side. His assistant called me twice in the first year, unofficial calls, just asking questions. I answered them. I'm not interested in watching them fail. I'm only interested in what I'm building. Navarra Studio is now in its second full year. We have a team of 4, which still amazes me. 4 people who showed up on purpose to work on things we care about. Last month, we were shortlisted for a regional design award for a community health clinic we redesigned on a tight budget. The project was mine, from first conversation to final walkthrough. Every decision deliberate. Nothing handed down from above. My name is on the award submission. My name is on the building lease. My name is finally on something. If you are the person in your family who stays, who picks up the prescriptions, covers the gaps, does the work no one sees, I want to tell you this, that patience is real and it matters, but it is not infinite, and it is not the same as strategy. You can love your family and also decide that the arrangement you've accepted has run its course. You can be loyal and still leave. You can be grateful for what something taught you, while also understanding that gratitude does not obligate you to stay inside a situation that will not change. The letter I left on the table that Thursday, not the folder but a single folded page beneath it, which my father found after I left, said only this. I gave this company everything I had. I'm going to find out what I can do with what's left. My father read it and called Cole immediately, apparently. Cole told me later that he'd never seen my father look like that. I like to think he finally saw me. Even if it was only after I was gone. I used to think patience was the same as virtue, that if I just kept showing up, kept delivering, kept being the one who stayed, eventually the people who mattered would see it and say so. I believed that for 7 years. I showed up early and left late and covered for my brother, and smiled through staff meetings where his name got the credit, and mine got the work. I told myself it would balance out. That's not how it works. I know that now. What I've learned, not from a book, not from anyone's advice, but from living inside that specific kind of quiet erosion, is that what we accept teaches people what we're worth. Not what we say we're worth. Not what we say we're worth. Not what we privately know we're worth. What we accept. Every time I fixed Cole's billing errors without saying anything, I taught my father that the errors were fine. Every time I smiled through a slight, I taught everyone in that room that the slight was acceptable. I was a willing participant in my own invisibility, and that's a hard thing to sit with. But here's the other side of it. All those years I spent learning that company from the inside out. The vendors, the margins, the clients, the processes. None of that was wasted. I thought I was building something for my father. I was actually building the foundation for Navarra Studio. The knowledge didn't belong to Hartwell. It lived in me. They couldn't take it when I left. And they couldn't replace it when I was gone. That's the thing about doing real work. It compounds inside you whether or not anyone is watching. Avery walked into that Thursday meeting not with anger, but with evidence. 7 years of it, organized in a folder, placed quietly on a table. That's not luck. That's what happens when someone who has been told she's invisible decides, finally, to make herself legible, on her own terms, in her own time. The outcome wasn't a confrontation, it was a recalibration. She didn't need to shout to be heard. She just needed to stop shrinking. I think about June a lot. The client who called Hartwell first and then called me 2 days later. She didn't know she was a turning point. She just knew who had actually done the work. That's the quiet justice in building something real. The people who paid attention remember. You don't have to campaign for their loyalty. You just have to deserve it and then give them a place to find you. If there is a through line in all of this, it's that integrity is not passive. It's not just about being good, or working hard, or not cutting corners. It's about knowing what you've built, and refusing to pretend you didn't build it. It's about having the courage to hand back the keycard when the alternative is spending another decade being underpaid for your own ideas. That takes something, not bravado, not rage, but a very quiet, very clear-eyed decision that you are done negotiating your own value with people who have already decided what it is. My name is on the door now. That's not a metaphor. It's a real door, a real lease, a real studio, and some mornings I stand in front of it for just a second longer than I need to, because I spent a long time working in rooms where my name wasn't on anything. It's a good feeling. I earned it the hard way. I'd do it again,